Well, hello, everybody. This is Tim Green with Rattle Magazine. Welcome to Rattlecast number 128. So glad you could join me on your Sunday. Today's guest is Bill Glose. He'll be with us in just about 15 minutes. But before we begin, I should say that Rattle is a publication of the Rattle Foundation, a 501c3 nonprofit working to promote the practice of poetry. We've been in continuous publication since 1995 and are unaffiliated with any other organization. We just do this because we love poetry, and I know you do too, so please do click the like button. Make sure you're subscribed. Share this wherever you can. If you're listening later on iTunes or something, leave a review. On Spotify, that helps. Every platform has something you can click to help us out in spreading the poetry all around the world, which is what we're always trying to do. Now, to begin, we're going to start with today's poem, the Poets Respond poem. And Bruce Bennett, a real legend within the literary community, is here with us in just a moment. Let me call up Bruce and see if we can get him on the line. Yeah, he wasn't here in the waiting room, so I'm wondering, I might have to call him on the phone. Let me try something a little different. Oh, maybe he's here. Bruce, is that you? Well, I might have to try him on the phone. Let's see. Okay, yeah, I'm just calling him on the phone. Hey, Bruce, this is Tim with Rattle, and you are live on the air. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I was trying to reach you through Skype, but it didn't work. So anyway, thanks, yes.
Yeah, no problem at all. I mean, this is really a podcast anyway. So,
sure, I know.
So we have the audio, which is all that really matters.
That's great.
But yeah, do you want to tell us about this poem that you wrote today? I just loved it.
Oh, well, thank you, Tim. Yes, as I mentioned, we live fairly near Auburn, so everybody around here is very conscious of crows, which may or may not be a problem. But I happened to be looking at the Washington Post, and there was an article about Sunnyvale, California, which is having the same problem. And actually, since the poem was posted, I've already heard from people who are writing in about crows in their particular area. So what happens is there's thousands and thousands of crows, and the people who live in the cities have trouble with them for various reasons, which the article mentioned. And I just happened to run across that and started to write the poem, and it got to be longer and what it is, and I suddenly thought, hey, this is one for Poets Respond if Tim's interested. So I was delighted you were.
Well, the timing was interesting, too. We actually, just for me personally, we went to Disneyland last week, and Disneyland was full of crows in the same way, which I'd never seen before, right over like the Haunted Mansion kind of
right.
Pirates of the Caribbean area. And so that was really fun to see, and then to see a poem about this, too.
Well, and also the article in the Washington Post starts out with, of course, Hitchcock, and they said these crows are not going to kill people. But anyway, it's funny because, you really do have mixed feelings, and Auburn's about 20 miles away from where I live. And when I drive there, the fields, we also have a lot of geese around, and they're in the field. But the crows recently have just been all over the place in the fields. And I wrote another poem just the day before about seeing a dead deer next to the road, and there were crows on the deer, and then there were crows in the sky approaching. And so it's we're really living in crowland, I guess.
Yeah, and it's interesting, too, just knowing how smart they are, too. I mean, they're some of the smartest animals in the world. And
right.
To see, how social and I don't know, they're really amazing to watch. So it's interesting to see these.
Well, the part that upset me, the only thing, I mean, they've tried everything as this place in Sunnyvale is. But the thing, they did have a crow hunt. And, they killed a lot of them. And it didn't make them go away, but people started to think, wait a minute, that's going a little too far. Scare them if you want. but don't kill them anyway. So that was part of what was behind what I was thinking. I mean, they were here before we were.
Yeah. And your poem, what I loved about it, in addition to just the great images that you move through and the humor that's involved as well, which you were always looking for because it's rare, is the form. It's just so well done. And you're a formalist poet. I wonder, it made me wonder how long it takes to write a poem like this. Like, do you sort of think in meter and rhyme? I mean, it just so flawlessly moves through the meter and rhyme. Is it something that you're so trained at that you don't have to work at? You kind of think that way, or does it?
Absolutely, yeah. In fact, when I see an article in the paper, almost immediately, I'll just start a poem, and I write them really quickly. I know you had Melissa Balmain on recently, and I frequently send poems to Poems of the Week, and of course she's looking for light verse generally, but those are always fun. But I've just found my first book of poetry was called Taking Off, not my second book, and I realized that a lot of my work just comes from seeing something and almost immediately taking off from it. And when I'm reading the New York Times or the Washington Post or just hearing something, a line or two will come into my head, and then I will finish it almost immediately. So most of my poems are pretty short. This is actually one of my longer poems.
Yeah. Well, I think we'll have to have you. I'd love to have you as a guest for a full show sometime. So we'll have to do that and set up Skype for sure ahead of time. But do you want to go ahead and read the poem?
Sure. And thank you for the changes that you made, because I was having technical problems trying to read it the first time. But
yeah, no problem.
Good. And of course, the title is taking off from Frost, Whose Woods These Are. Whose woods these were. If we could reason with the crows, it might not help us, but who knows? Thus, Sunnyvale's embattled mare. They've tried all sorts of things, but there the crows still are and will remain. So far, all efforts are in vain. The sidewalks will stay coated white. The skies will darken every night as countless crows fly home to roost. The citizens must just get used to living with an alien species. But it's not just the noise and feces. It's that crows ought to understand who owns and should control the land. What makes them think they have a stake in what they rudely seek to take that isn't theirs? Why don't they flock to garbage on some other block? What makes them think they own the bowers we've planted here that should be ours? Let them beware. We will resort to stronger means. We'll go to court, throw nature out with all her minions, though they've a right to their opinions.
Yeah, that was just great. Thanks so much for writing this poem and sharing with us and joining us today, Bruce.
Oh, thank you so much, Tim. I really enjoy Rattle, and it's great to be on it in this way.
Awesome. Thanks.
Good.
Yeah. Talk to you soon.
Thanks a lot. Yep. Bye-bye.
Bye. Yeah, that was Bruce Bennett, who, as a formalist, he was the longtime editor of Field. He co-founded Plowshares. Bruce goes back, and it's just a brilliant poet. It's wonderful to have a poem from him in Poets Respond. And let's look at the other poem, too, before we get to our main guest. On Tuesday, we published a poem on Bob Hickok's birthday. And this is by Karan Kapoor, Circles. And Karan writes, Bob Hickok's birthday is today. I write poems because I want to make someone feel the same way Bob's poems make me feel, full of wonder, beauty, joy, and innocence. Each of his poems take me to a place beyond suffering. I imagine it'd be easier for Sisyphus to roll his boulder up and down the hill if there was Tchaikovsky in the background, or I was reading him Bob's poems. I do not like that we write tribute poems to poets only once they're dead. Bob Hickok is alive and writing the most surprising poems and deserves to be celebrated every day, but especially today. I'm so glad he was born. His poems make me want to be a better person. And that was Wednesday's poem. And I love the idea of paying tribute to poets while they're still alive, rather than waiting until they've passed on. And Bob, has many, many, many more poems in him that are coming our way. So happy birthday to Bob with this poem, which is a very interesting metaphor for what poetry does, I thought. This is Karan Kapoor with Circles. Here we go. You have to shrink the screen a little bit. There we go. That's better.
Circles after Bob Hickok. I do not want my mother to die. My mother does not want her mother to die. Her mother does not want her husband to die. Her husband does not want his son to die. His son does not want his daughter to die. His daughter is too young to pronounce death, let alone decipher it. 3 days later, when her grandfather will die, she'll be braiding her doll's hair. 36 years later, when her father will die, she'll be looking with ocean eyes at her 6-year-old daughter braiding the hair of her doll. 3 days later, tired of the doll, her daughter will ask her the question she did not ask her mother. Where do they go? She won't know what words to put in her mouth, so she'll leave her mouth open. She'll chew on it all night. Nobody wants to go somewhere where they can't return from, do they? But then who wants to go so far only to return? My father cuts the strings of kites when they are way up in the sky. The world is full of kites like these.
The world is full of kites like these. I just love that ending and that metaphor. Once again, it was called Karan Kapoor with Circles after Bob Hickok. That was Tuesday's poem last week. What we're going to do is start having, talking about the last poem rather than having a preview. So we have another poem coming up this Tuesday, which you will see on Tuesday, but we'll keep it a surprise until then. So we're going to take a quick break, and I'm going to go to today's main guest, Bill Glose. So we'll see him in just a moment. Hang on, and I will be right back. And we're back. Thanks for your patience. Bill Glose is an award-winning writer whose honors include the F. Scott Fitzgerald Short Story Award, the Dateline Award for Excellence in Journalism, and the Heroes Voices Award for Veterans Poetry. Bill is the author of 5 books of poetry, most recently Postscript to War and Virginia Walkabout, and 2 chapbooks as well. From 2003 to 2020, Bill was a contributing editor with Virginia Living and a regular contributor to other magazines. He still writes freelance articles, appears frequently as a featured speaker on Literary Craft, and serves as a judge in writing contests. Hundreds of his articles, stories, and poems have appeared in numerous publications, some of which are shown at the right. I don't know why I include that. That's from his website. You can find his website at billglose.com. And here he is, Bill Glose. Hey, Bill, how you doing?
Hey, doing great. Glad to join you.
Yeah, it's wonderful to have you. I've been a fan of your work for a long time. That I mentioned it before, but that Phases of Erasure poem is one of the most creative and powerful poems we've ever published. I love that poem. And then poems that we've come up with since then have been just wonderful too. So it's really great to have you as a guest today.
Yeah, I was really glad when you took Sasquatch. that was a fun poem. But the Phases of Erasure, that one took a long time to create. I was thinking about how in war, when soldiers go off, when they first join the military, they've got these great feelings of pride, and they come in with everything they grew up with as civilians, as children. Infantry has the word infant in it. We send kids off to fight our wars. And so we go in with this kid's mentality, and it is quickly bruised and battered. And so I thought a great way to show this of someone going from their idealistic nature to being bruised and changed to eventually at the end being shattered was to use an erasure poem. Instead of taking found poetry, using something and erasing pieces of it to create the poem, I created it myself. So I work from two different ends. One about how the idealistic nature, and then the end, where they are suffering, and then working to get them to line up took in the book. Anyone who looks at the actual text will see that in the first section, the words from it line up with the words from the second section. Those words are the same exact words that appear here, where everything else is erased. And then when they go to the third section, the same thing applies there. So to get that all to work out took a lot of time, and I'm glad that you appreciated it.
Yeah, well,
so should I start off reading that one? Or?
Yeah. I was going to say it took me a long time to get that typeset too. I remember I kind of forgot about it, but having it, having it line up that way in Rattle, it was, it's a different size fonts and everything, so everything had to be shuffled around.
Right.
But yeah, that's a good. Why don't we start out with that poem, and hopefully everybody home. Your connection's a little unstable, so hopefully it'll smooth out. I'm not sure. It's not as consistent as it was yesterday, but hopefully it'll smooth out. But let's start with phases of erasure. Go ahead.
Okay. Phases of erasure. 1. Phase line whiskey. Love was the first word uttered after Mama and Papa, who scratched your babbling language into a memory book to mark milestones from your childhood. A dictionary that grew wide as distance between stars. The first time a new principle was introduced, gravity keeps us down, it's impossible to disappear, you always questioned why. Your parents encouraged you to walk, to run, to leap. Your mind knew nothing of boundaries, the barriers preventing fantasies from becoming real. In your world, matters of the soul harmonized with crickets' heartbeats. When neighborhood kids trampled the line of daylilies by the duck pond, you cried, confused by cheerful shows of power and dominance. Your lust was for all things green and growing. Not a thing flew in the blue sky that did not make you want to soar. Fireworks on 4th of July made you think of kaleidoscopes, the sparkled bombs exploding high up in the black, and the tattered, tumbling cardboard shrapnel of falling leaves. Dreams full of joy, a boy in your pajamas flying out of bed, no pain when you thudded to the carpet in a room filled with matchbox cars and toy soldiers. Your last thought on nights when the full moon swallowed your window, wondering if tomorrow you might wake up on its foreign soil, wondering whether life would be cockeyed peering down through your window like a mourner peeking into a grave, or if your beating heart would still find magic among its craters. God knows how many times you took apart toasters and clocks, having to know what slows the hour hand, which cog locks in with which gear to combat the slippage of seconds. And how many times you picked through trash cans, searching every nook prying apart shadows until each hidden treasure becomes yours. The only enemy you'd ever known was ignorance. The only mystery, how every unturned stone did not ignite everyone's curiosity. Who can hide the longest was your favorite game. The cavern behind your captain's bed becoming an improvised fort in which you would sit for hours, imagining devices that might make you invincible, that might make your ridiculous wants come true. You longed to turn the magic spinning through your body into something tangible, an overcoat you could drape over inanimate objects to give them life, to fill every empty space with ideas stitched from the fabric of your dictionary until the last void stoppers with the very last word. Your parents took away your only pet, a turtle, after exploring fingers got stuck a third time in its shell, asking, "But what is inside?" You hated not touching the answer, something so full of possibility. 2. Phase line alpha. Love was the first word scratched from your dictionary, the first principle to disappear. Your parents knew nothing of the real world, matters of the heart trampled by power and lust. Not a thing that flew in the blue sky that did not make you think of bombs and shrapnel. Dreams of pain filled your nights, wondering if tomorrow foreign soil would be your grave. Your beating heart knows how time flows in combat, how every shadow becomes the enemy, how every unturned stone can hide an improvised device that wants to turn your body into an inanimate object, to empty your dictionary until the last word in its shell is hate. 3. Phase line Romeo. Nothing matters. Not the blue sky, not dreams of tomorrow. Your heart sows, becomes stone.
Yeah, that is just such a great poem. Can you explain a little bit about how it came to be as an erasure? Was that your idea originally to have it written that way, or when did you come to that? You mentioned in an interview or essay or something that I saw that you revise a lot. You revise was one of your
Yes.
dictums.
Right.
So how much of that came in the revision? Like, at what point did you realize that was the form that the poem should take?
Originally, I was writing down some thoughts of what I wanted to create with this, and I had seen some other erasure poems, which in general use found work.
Actually, hang on, Bill.
Erase.
Bill, hang on
from
1
them.
second.
Yes.
I'm gonna hang up and call you back, and hopefully we'll get a better connection, because it was stable a little bit for a while, then it's getting choppy again. So let me just hang up, and maybe we'll get a better server, more direct or something.
Okay. Or should I try that maybe?
Yeah, I'm just gonna hang up and I'll call you back. So just answer when
Okay.
I call. Okay. Yeah. So sorry everybody. It's sometimes that happens. Let me see. Try it this way. Hey, Bill, you there? Let's see. Maybe that worked a little better.
Is okay? Is that any better now?
I hope so. The weird thing, which usually doesn't happen, is that your video is choppy, but your voice was choppy. Usually they like prefer the audio. I don't know. Anyway, we'll see if it's better now.
Okay.
Yeah. So I was just asking about the how the erasure poem came to be. So
Right.
Can you start over with that?
Right. So I was I gathered up information for this poem, and I started creating it. And as I did, I was thinking about found poetry and how a poem can be pulled from something else, from a line of text, from a page in a magazine, from anything. And I was thinking about how one changes the original material, and that was the same message I was trying to give in this, showing the change that happens with a soldier. And so pretty near the beginning, I wanted to make this an erasure poem, but I didn't have the text, the pages that I was going to take it from found. So I was creating it from whole cloth. And there's several places in there when it gets near the end where it's talking about hate and combat and things like that. And it was tricky working those into the beginning when it's showing the childlike enthusiasm for life, and to get those in there. Let's see if I can find, so talking about the fireworks with the sparkle bombs exploding, and talking about what it would be like to be on the moon, looking down through the window, if that would be like looking into your grave. And so working some things like that in to try to keep some childish magic alive while still placing those words into the text to be able to be used later.
Oh, that's so fascinating. So I didn't imagine that you sort of, it was almost like an erasure in reverse, like you're planting evidence to, planting something to appear later. That is really, really interesting.
Right.
So
it did go both ways, right?
Yeah, that's interesting. Do you want to talk a little bit about how you came into, first you were a soldier in the Gulf War. So do you want to talk about how you became a soldier and what happened?
Okay, so I am not just a veteran. I am the son of a veteran. My father was an Air Force pilot for 23 years. He flew in Vietnam, and I grew up on Air Force bases overseas. And as with most kids, I wanted to be like my father. As with most boys, I wanted to do what he did, but I've got bad eyes. So when I went off to college and enrolled in Air Force ROTC, I thought I was on track to become a pilot, and they assigned me to a missileer slot instead. So I figured, okay, if I can't fly the planes, I'm going to jump out of them. And so I went next door to Army ROTC, and I signed on, and I became a paratrooper. So that's how that all evolved.
And at what point did you become a poet? Were you writing poems even at that time, or is it a more recent thing that you've come to?
Yeah, so the poetry came about after the war. I've always been a writer. I wrote all kinds of stories and tiny little novelettes when I was a kid, and I've just always written and been enamored with the written word. When I got out of the Army, I was writing articles, essays, short stories, and I was working on a novel. I was doing all of that, but I wasn't writing about my war experiences. It was all made up. And my writing mentor, Billy Walsh, he kept prodding me and encouraging me to write about my war. And so I did start writing some poems. I figured that was a way I could examine things without having to come up with an answer. And just exploring through poetry, I found very cathartic. And most of them I just I would write them and stick them in a drawer. Some other friends of mine encouraged me to go to open mics and start reading them. And the first time I did, it was a scary experience, because I have this image of myself, as everyone does, and what I want people to think of me is different from the person I was in war. And I was worried what people would think of me if they saw what I did, what I thought, and what I experienced. What I found, however, after I read the first poem at one of these open mics, was great acceptance, and people coming up to me and thanking me for sharing, and talking about their brothers or sisters or parents or friends who had gone off to war and not come back the same. So it's been the healing power of words has really helped me out through poetry.
Yeah, well, that makes a lot of sense, and it it's one of the things that we talk about all the time, is how much the power of poetry as a vehicle for both healing and exploration, which are really, they go hand in hand, because it's making sense of things that is healing, and so I don't know. It's no wonder that you're such interesting, good poems when you're coming from that perspective, because it's that honesty and that true seeking nature that we really resonates with people, I think. Do you want to read another poem, and then we'll talk more?
Certainly. So I think since Bruce Bennett was doing a formal poem at the beginning of the show, I thought I'd do a sonnet myself. Unlike Bruce, formal poems do not come naturally to me, but I do like the way they push me into areas that I wasn't expecting. I also love the beauty of the sonnet and the interesting surprises that come up when you adhere to its form. This particular poem rockets off into space before coming back into Earth. It's gold anodized plaques depict the human race. Conceived by Sagan, they arrow through space toward Taurus, 2 million years away. The man's right hand raised as if to convey welcoming wishes of our soft bodies, naked, intact. All of NASA agrees that this is the image we should broadcast instead of what remains after the blast. How skin part to show the ribs, the hollow muscled heart, the notch in which it rests atop a lung, papillated tongue of a soldier before he could describe what beat within, what made him feel alive.
And that was Anatomy Lesson from Postscript to War, the newest book by Bill Glose. And so one of the things, Bill, that I always use this metaphor for poetry, and I compare it to skydiving. I feel like it's like mental skydiving in a way, because I think that it's the kind of a thrill that some people appreciate as a thrill and other people appreciate as terrifying. And it's that access to something that we didn't know we know or don't want to think about. Like, it's a challenge, and some people are like sort of challenge seekers mentally, and enjoy skydiving, and other people, that's the last thing on earth they would want to do. So as someone, I think you're the only poet I've ever talked to who actually has skydived. Is that a ridiculous comparison? Like, is there a thrill to it that you could relate to poetry at all?
So one of the things about skydiving is that when you go out, you're hurtling toward a target, and you have to adapt to the environment as you go. However, most of the parachuting that I did, military jumping is very different from skydiving. When people think of skydiving, they think of a football game and someone with smoke trailing from his boot as he does little circles and acrobatic in the sky, and then tiptoes off at the 50-yard line. With military jumping, when we exit first off, we jump very low. The 82nd, our training jumps, we exit the aircraft at 800 feet above ground level. And for combat jumps, it's 500 feet above ground level. So there's really not a lot of time. When you exit the aircraft, the prop blast from it throws you sideways. You have this immediate jerk, and you're hooked into the aircraft with a static line that pulls your parachute out from the pack on your back. And if you don't feel that opening shock in the first 4 seconds out the door, you've got to pull the reserve on your stomach. Otherwise, you're going to hit the ground. Even after your chute opens and you level out, you still are coming down to the ground at 18 to 22 feet per second.
Oh, wow.
So what they train you to do is to curve your body. If you think of like there you go, to curve your body so that when you land, you spread the impact out all across your body instead of just landing straight up and down, because if you do that, you can break a leg. In every battalion-sized jump that I did, at least one person broke a leg, usually more.
Wow, and I had no idea.
I had a total of 60 jumps while I was in, and the only injury I got a concussion on one of the jumps. It's impact. So exit the aircraft.
Bill, you're breaking up again. I'm going to try to, we'll try one more time to reestablish this connection. Let's see. So do you want to hang up and then re-enter this place, and maybe that'll help?
Yeah. I was going to say, maybe I should hang up and try again. So I will join you again just as quick as I can.
Okay, sure. Okay, so we'll see if this can work. Sorry for the technical difficulties. We'll see. We'll see if the connection's better. It was fine yesterday, which is the frustrating part. Yeah, just bear with me, everybody. Waiting for Bill to come back. Well, he's not coming back. Let's see. Maybe see if I can find his phone number and we'll give him a call. I'm going to go to a quick break while we figure this out. So I'll be right back.
Okay, is that?
Oh, wait, never mind. There he is. Hey, Bill. Yeah. There you go. Okay, so maybe it'll be better this time. The other thing, if it keeps happening, we can. Do you see that there's a camera button? You could always turn off your camera. So if it happens again, what we'll do is just hit that camera icon, and then it'll cut off your video, but we should still have audio, and then we can just do the podcast through audio. But it's nice to see it too, so hopefully it'll work. I don't know what's going on, but everything is subject to how the servers are feeling and any particular day.
Right.
So let's go to another poem. What do you want to read next?
Okay. Well, we had just talked about parachuting, so I thought I'd do a parachuting poem that comes from my an earlier collection called Half a Man, and this is called Aerodynamics. Pointed tips of bullets slice air with supersonic cracks. Mortar rounds hurl themselves from tubes, fins providing grace to parabolas. T-10s have no steering lines. Bodies drift beneath silk where wind and chance decides. An easy trajectory to follow with the front sight post of a rifle. The only defense is speed, so paratroopers fall like flower pots knocked from ledges. They rush to greet soil's fist at 22 feet per second. The impact enough to snap straight legs like fired clay. At the last second, jumpers curl bodies like runners on rocking chairs. Spread the kiss of earth from foot to shoulder, slink into tall grass.
Yeah, that was Aerodynamics from one of the earlier books. Which book did you say that was from, Bill?
That was from Half a Man.
Half a Man. Okay, yeah, and we have the cover of Half a Man over here. But yeah, so you talked about how being in the military changes you. Can you talk a little about that? About how what that process was like, and looking back at yourself, it feels like you kind of get a sense of just the way we're different people over time, going through experiences like that. Can you explain what that was like?
Yeah, well, when you're in the military, especially when you're in a combat unit, every action you do matters. If you aren't carrying the proper equipment, someone else in your unit might suffer because of it. Even if something as simple as you didn't drink enough water and so you get dehydrated, then someone else has to pick up your slack and the unit can suffer. Here in the civilian world, it doesn't matter what time I wake up. It doesn't matter if I'm feeling dehydrated, I can just stop at 7-Eleven and get a Gatorade. Mm-hmm. There's always choices and options. So the hardship of the experience really, it brings soldiers together, and it keeps you tight with them for the rest of your life. And then when you get out and you encounter other veterans, even from other services, there's still that close bond with them, because there's the shared experience, knowing what you went through because they know what they went through. And then coming home, a lot of people sometimes find problems in regaining that sense of purpose. The importance of what they do, and so that can be difficult in transitioning.
Mm-hmm. So another thing that I didn't realize about you, that you have a degree in civil engineering, which
Right.
is always interesting too. So you have such a diverse background compared to most poets. Do you think that what you learned as a civil engineer has any effect on the way you go about approaching a poem? Like, do you think about it in terms of that kind of construction more than other poets might, do you think?
I hadn't much thought, but the thing that being trained as an engineer does is it teaches you a way to think about things, to problem solve. And I think that does come into my poetry. I will say that I graduated with a degree in civil engineering from Virginia Tech, but then I became a paratrooper immediately after. So the only civil engineering I did was digging foxholes. and then after I got out, I was in factories for a while before becoming a writer.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, civil engineering, the thought process that you gain from it is real helpful for anything you do in life. And it does come into my writing too. You mentioned at the outset about writing and editing, and I do believe in editing a lot. I think that the first draft of anything I write, I edit with a scalpel. So I'm a real tough editor. I'll feel the emotion of something and just vomit it out onto the page. And, it might be poorly constructed, but there will be pieces of it that really speak to me and capture what feeling or thinking. And then from there, pieces or adding on or exploring, an avenue that grows out of it. And I think that, comes from my engineering mind, from trying to set.
You're breaking up again, but why don't you hit that camera button, and then we'll just do audio.
Right.
So let's see if that can help. How about now? Can you hear me?
All right.
Okay.
So,
yeah, that's just clear now. We'll have to do the rest of the show this way, but no problem.
Okay.
I probably should have done that earlier. But yeah, so you were talking about the editing process and how much goes into that, and that's what I was thinking exactly. Was that that engineering has so much sort of an iterative mindset, like you perfect things over time and tinker with the efficiency and that has a lot to do with the way poems are constructed at the same time. So it's interesting to hear, you come from that, have that training, even if you didn't use it for more than foxholes. You still, come from that background and sort of maybe think that way. And so it's really interesting to see that come out in a poem like Phases of Erasure that we were talking about before, where, you could see it sort of be constructed piece by piece over different iterations through time.
Right. And I have found also when I'm doing the revisions that poems can take on new lives of their own. One thing that's really important to me is the lyricism of a poem. It matters not only what you are saying, but how you say it. I think there is a music in poetry that is as important as the lyrics that you use. And, so one of the things I do when I'm editing, I will take a poem that I've created, and when I go out on my morning walks, let's say I'm going on a 4 or 5 mile walk, I'll turn this poem over and over in my head, and I'll say it aloud, looking like a crazy person. And as I go along, there'll be pieces of it that are a little jarring or not smooth. It doesn't transition properly, and I'll just keep working it. And as I walk, it will smooth itself out. And then when I get back, I will make those changes to the poem, and that has helped me a lot. I think.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about that walk? Because you have the Virginia Walkabout book, where the whole book is poems sort of composed in that way, and I think
Right.
it said you walked like 1,500 miles or something while writing the book.
Yeah. So I've lived in Virginia for over 40 years, and as much as I love about the state, there's so much hidden history I didn't know, and so I wanted to get to know my state firsthand. And I decided to undertake this crazy odyssey of doing a 1,500-mile walk around Virginia. And I explored every region, I crossed every border, and along the way, I learned as much about myself as I did the state. and I wrote poems about these experiences, and they went in my book, Virginia Walkabout. And I do have one poem to share from that book here. So sometimes tiny pieces from your life blend together with world events to create the magic of a poem. The region I live in is called Hampton Roads, and the greater metropolitan area there includes Army, Navy, and Air Force bases. Well, I hiked through one of those bases, Fort Monroe, with an Army buddy of mine who was preparing to deploy to Afghanistan for his 7th hardship tour. Recent news reports at that time had stated 22 veterans were committing suicide every day. So I feared for my friend, both during the upcoming deployment and then after his return. Well, while we were hiking through Fort Monroe, we came across a hidden pet cemetery. And there was another friend of mine who had recently put down a beloved who had cancer. So all of those pieces from my life and world events and the environment all went into the following poem, which is called Among the Crenellations. Like wolves in packs of 4 and 5, they lope along the avenue, these muscled men in gray shorts and tees, hair shorn to bristles. Or else they run in columned blocks, invading half the street with cadent song that claps their stroking legs like metronomes. Every word audacious, every gliding movement grinning. It is easy to believe these gods we've chiseled from granite principles will live forever. Along Fort Monroe's parapets, they race into an autumn wind, sun glinting off the James, dew surrendering in misty streamers to the coming day. Supersonic shrieks of raptors score the sky, contrails spelling out in white on blue the countless ways a body rips apart. No mystery in blood and bone. These boys know all too well the rust-barbed price of wisdom. Mindless motion propels them past red brick federals of General's Row, where patriotic bunting flaps on Doric columns. Arms and legs piston in lubricating sweat over the moat, through the tunnel, up a grass-scuffed berm where iron skeletons of gun emplacements lay bare behind a limestone wall. And there, among the crenellations, in a manicured swath of green, they stretch beside the flush stone slabs of a pet cemetery, reading epitaphs. Each soldier pictures loyal dogs on clinic tables, whispered promises that sleep must be better than this, fingers twined in fur as everything rigid falls slack.
Yeah, that was Among the Crenellations from Virginia Walkabout, the second to last book that Bill Glose has published. I'm curious about that, just what your experience was like. Did you do that all at once, those 15,000 miles? And how did you stay? And the people you met along the way, what was that like? And over how much of time were you doing that?
Well, so this was in 2010 and 2011. Mm-hmm. While I was in the mountains, that Snowmageddon occurred, and that put a halt to the walk. So I picked it up in spring of the following year, and I did it piecemeal. So if you picture links in a chain, I would walk one link, and then the next time I would go back out and pick up where I'd left off on the other link, and stitch them all together. A good friend of mine, Dawn West, walked 500 miles with me at different points, and then another 500 miles I walked with a variety of other people. some that I met along the way, some friends that just wanted to come out and join in this great adventure. And then another 500 miles I walked by myself. But the guiding principle of it, in addition to wanting to learn about the state and the people in it, I told myself any adventure, anything interesting that I came across, I needed to participate in. So along the way, I flew in a World War II aircraft. I visited a buffalo farm. I jumped from a cliff into a water-filled quarry, and I visited a nudist colony.
Oh, wow.
so lots of interesting adventures.
Yeah, I bet. And another thing that you do, you're a journalist, and you wrote many articles for places like Virginia Living about a wide range of topics about science and interviewing people. I think I saw a picture of you on your website with Buzz Aldrin.
Right.
and so how does it compare? Does writing for that context, for an audience in prose, does that affect your poetry? Do you think in the same kind of ways, or is it a totally separate aspect of writing?
There are different aspects of writing that come into it, whether I'm writing fiction, nonfiction articles, or poetry. I mentioned before how the thing I loved about poetry most is the way I can investigate something, just explore the nature of something without really getting an answer. Just asking the questions in poetry is often enough. That's not quite the case when you're writing an article. When you're writing an article, you need to have an answer. However, the disciplines you use to write in each of these genres, I think, has helped me in each of them. My poetry has helped my fiction has helped my nonfiction has helped my poetry. It's just a great synergy between them.
Mm-hmm. Well, I should say, if anybody has any questions for Bill, please leave them in the chat windows. I will pass them along either on Facebook or YouTube. But let's hear another poem, Bill.
Okay. So, a lot of what I write about, in Half a Man, I wrote about my various experiences, and in Postscript to War, I expand and write about the continuing wars and other soldiers' experiences. When I came home from Iraq, so many people wanted to know what it was like to be shot at, what it was like to shoot someone else. Teenage boys were especially fascinated. They thought war was glorious, like an immersive video game. So this poem is for them, and it's called Get Some. They chanted, these zombies, thumbing controllers, mesmerized by crosshairs on screens, eruptions of arterial red. Get some, get some. Cave dwellers wearing headsets, their avatars run, point, shoot at friends whose faces they've never seen. Get some, get some. Sunshine is no lure. No excitement in swatches of green grass, no wonder in the sky. They want to know what it's like to watch a head explode for real. Can't wait until they're 18, worried they'll miss their chance to get some. I want to roll a boulder into their river, change its course. I want to press weight of history upon them, but their minds are already flat. They howl at videos of skateboarders face planting, grinding tracts of skin on pavement. Whoa, dude, he got him some. These boys wear innocence like a dirty diaper. If only I could shield their eyes before jigsaw of someone they once knew burns into retinas, before charred flesh fills noses, and eardrums reverberate with cries for help, yowls for mama. I want to pound into their chests the pain of yesterday so they'll be careful tomorrow. If they knew how soft a body really was, would that lessen their love of steel? If they knew how easily limbs could be shorn like wisps of their barely visible beards, would they caress their arms and legs to savor the memory? Or would they still want to get some? Imagine, I want to say, a nail piercing your foot slowly, rusted barbs ripping raw edges of flesh. Now, multiply that by 100, by 1,000. But these kids are not good at math. They will live forever. They will get some. Taste it for themselves. Taste it, smell it, chew it, swallow it, become what they've dreamed of since weaning off cartoons. Get some, get some, get some. The mantra spews, and only one thing will salve this slash of longing, one cure, one blade that promises exactly what they want. The guillotine beckons, and up the steps they climb, chanting with every footfall, get some, get some. To look inside its bucket, they must expose tender necks. Even this won't stop them. Nothing will. Not until they get some, until they get some.
It was a powerful poem, Get Some, from Bill's earlier book from 2010 or so. What year was that, Bill?
I think you're right. It's
like
either 10 or 12.
Yeah, that was from Half a Man. So anybody who wants that book too, both Postscript to War and Half a Man kind of speak to each other, I would say. One of the things I was wondering about is if you feel like, and I hadn't read these poems actually. I read the book, the newer book. Do you think that do you work actively to try to dissuade people from joining the military?
Not to dissuade them. I think there are some great things about the military and about the experience and about the camaraderie. Mm-hmm. But I want people to understand what they're getting into, and I think the movie Saving Private Ryan, anyone who wants to get into the military should watch the opening 20 minutes of that. Mm-hmm. There's nothing glorious or glamorous about war. It is, a horror. And, people playing their video games at home and think, oh, I want to, go and shoot others. Well, they're going to be shooting at you too. And, so I just want people to have a full understanding of what they're getting into. If they're, make sure that they're aware.
Yeah. I mean, and there's just so much propaganda in the other direction too, to try to convince people that it is, fun and have this like video game mentality and the, dulce et decorum est and all that kind of thing too. So having a more balanced view is something you're trying to push against a lot of messaging, right?
Right. And, as I said, just, the gleam and glamour that so many people view it with is just not true. Mm-hmm. Now, all of my military experiences, were not war. I went to Panama for a while. The parachuting was an incredible experience, and I did do some skydiving on my own mm-hmm. afterwards. Just the experiences of going to foreign countries and getting to see the culture of being stitched into this huge fabric of other military members. There's a lot that you do get out of it as well. I think one of the poems I sent you a video link for, Mouth of Sand. That one, talks about the experiences of being in the desert. It has, nothing to do with war per se, but, it does show, what it's like being somewhere that is so foreign to most of our experiences here in America.
Yeah, well, there's no questions right now, but there's a lot of people talking about how powerful, especially that last poem, Get Some, was. Lisa Allison says, incredibly powerful. That's the first poem that has brought me to tears, nausea, and awe at its beauty at the same time. Sheer brilliance and beautifully read. And Olga Kleckner, what a powerful and stunning poem, she says. And I could totally agree. I mean, that your performance of that was just one of the most powerful things. Patricia Casey here says, powerful, Bill. I love the emotion you portrayed in your reading. So I just thought I'd pass that along to you since you can't see the audience.
Thank you.
And so let's play this. Let's play this video. You're not going to be able to hear it, so you just have to wait until I sort of come back. You're just going to have like a minute or two of silence.
Okay, no problem.
But I'm gonna mute you, and I'll play this video, and then we'll talk about what you're doing with video on YouTube. So you have 2 YouTube channels, I believe, that you run. So we'll talk about that. And but let's see. This is a Mouth of Sand, and I'll put it up on the screen here. This is from Bill Glose's channel, or this is from Virginia Poetry Online.
Right, which I run, but I'll talk about that after.
Yeah, so let's hear this, and I'll come back in a second, Bill. Okay, so here's this poem, Mouth of Sand.
Mouth of Sand by Bill Glose. Outside our tents, wind-whipped brown lances every sliver of exposed skin. Canvas walls billow like gasping lungs as we spit gouts of sand-flecked phlegm and listen to a low-pitched keening like the moaning of a bassoon. Truth is like the scouring grit of wind, precious lies stripped away to leave one naked as a newborn calf. Sand inside our goggles, our gloves, our underwear, the interior mechanisms of our guns, bolts cracked open to reveal powder as fine as regolith scooped from the moon, a surface without atmosphere, without sound. Every granule loves to tell the story of how it once belonged to a mountain, before the pulverizing sledge of time, before the yowl of wind eroded every falsehood to which it clung.
And that was Mouth of Sand from Bill's book, Postscript to War. And really another powerful video you put together there, Bill. Can you talk about like what are you trying to do on these 2 YouTube channels? You have I believe you have your own YouTube channel, right? And then you also have the Virginia.
Virginia Poetry Online. So the Bill Glose channel, that's just personal videos and things you share with family and whatnot. But the professional channel, that's Virginia Poetry Online. I am a member of the Poetry Society of Virginia, and as so I go around the state to attend poetry readings, and I bring my video camera with me, and I film different readings. The original purpose behind this was so that people could see the poetry that's going on throughout the state. You can't, an individual can't go everywhere. But then also, if you're going to an area and you want to know what types of poetry events are in that area, my hope was for this channel to show them, here are events in Northern Virginia, here are events in Norfolk, and they can view some of the videos and say, oh, I like this, or oh, I don't like that, I'll try somewhere else, to give people an idea before they go. Along with that, I've created a number of poetry movies. there's this one, Mouth of Sand, but then there are others where just like blocking a regular movie or short video, I've had people narrate the poems and then act them out, and we've gone to the Chrysler Museum, we've gone into gardens, we've all kinds of interesting things, and it's just been a fun process.
Yeah, it's always interesting to see poets that do use YouTube, because it's such an opportunity to share poetry in the spoken word, which is the way that's sort of meant to be. It's an oral, audio, musical type genre, really, even though we read it on the page. And how do you go about like when you choose what to show? Like how do you think about what images to show and when you're doing a poem like that? Do you think it's best to display what's going on at the time? Or I always worry about the distraction, I guess, of the interplay, because I like to get lost in a poem, and so I wonder about how video poems work. I've never get to figure out how to do it best. So how do you think about it?
Okay. So I'll get to how I think about it in a second, but first I wanted, you said that you want to get lost in a poem. You have a good mind for poetry and can get lost in it. There are some people that have difficulty with poetry. A lot of people express that, and this making a poetry movie serves as a bridge to those people as well. One of the poetry movies that I made that took place in a garden, the woman who did the poem said she showed the video to her husband, who had heard that poem and others she'd read, and he said, I finally get it. And
oh, wow.
So I think it can be helpful. What I do is I look at the poem itself, and then using my engineering mentality, I try to break it into segments and ask what is going on, and then just try to visualize it like I would a movie. There are some poems that don't lend themselves to this type of artistic expression, but those that do, it makes a beautiful marriage when you can combine them, and instead of taking away from the poem, it just enhances it and it strengthens it. I think when you watch a poetry movie, the poem can stay with you longer in some cases.
Yeah, I think you might be right about that. Yeah, so it was fascinating to see this. And so if anybody wants to subscribe, go just type in Virginia Poetry Online in a YouTube search bar, and then click the subscribe button there. Or Bill Glose, you can subscribe to his channel as well. Let's hear another poem, Bill.
Okay. So this one also comes from Half a Man, and it opens with an epigraph by the Greek philosopher Democritus. And I think it's all pretty self-explanatory. So this is called Particles. Nothing exists except atoms and empty space. Democritus. All smells are particulate. Think about that as you march past burned trucks. Upon melted seats are forms blackened and shriveled like banana peels left in the sun. Stench wafts through your nose, tickles cilia, lies down to sleep in your olfactory bulb. A decaying piece of someone else, a spot of liver, a morsel of tongue. Only comfort is this: no one ever dies. They simply change form. Atoms that a day before were my enemy, now my friend. They wanted so much to escape. I breathe deeply. Think, be with me.
And that was Particles from Half a Man, again, the earlier book by Bill. So, Bill, what is your... you also write short stories, too. And you have a short story collection coming. Or is it a novel? It's a short story collection, I think, right?
Yeah, it is a short story collection.
Mm-hmm.
It could be viewed as a novel because all the stories taken together tell one complete story, and the characters intertwine in the different stories. It's called All the Ruined Men, and it comes out in August by St. Martin's Press. And I mentioned before how my friend was getting ready to deploy for his 7th hardship tour, and we just kept, as the wars dragged on, we just kept sending the same people over and over and over. I was when I was in the Gulf War, I was in the Middle East for 7 months, and then I came home and I did not deploy to combat again. These kids are just, getting battered by it. And so I wanted to explore the effects on the soldiers, and especially what it was like to try to transition back to the civilian world afterwards. And to do this fully, I wanted to expand beyond the bounds of poems, and I wanted to show an entire squad of soldiers and show them going out into the civilian world and all the difficulties they had. And so that's what takes place in All the Ruined Men.
Yeah. And so how do you think of like when you go about to write a poem, do you have any sort of philosophy about what a poem should do? That's one of the things I always wonder about. Like, do you think about engaging it in a certain way, and then do you have like a goal as you write the poem, or is it just exploring something you're wondering about?
Well, there are a variety of ways I approach a poem. Sometimes it will just be an image that captures me, and I will take that image not knowing where it's going to take me and just follow it. And so those can be, very fun, revelatory poems, and I seldom know where they're going to end up. Other times there will be something going on in the world that shocks me, and I have a message I want to say about it, but I don't want to just come right out and say that message. And so I will work around the periphery of it and try to explore all those things and see where they will lead me. I think that poetry has the power to engage the reader in their own thoughts. Poetry is it's like a conversation between the writer and the reader, and where the reader takes your poem might not be where you intended, but that's part of the engagement. So every person who reads it might come away thinking something different. And
yeah, kind of along those lines, maybe. There's a question from Cindy Gore. She asks, have you had certain images from your experience that haunt you until you finally write about them? Which is something I wanted to talk about, too, because, we talk a lot about how poetry is a great avenue for healing, because you can sort of make sense of things that one part of your brain understands, but the other doesn't, or however complicated ways that works. And so it seems like writing poetry is such a great thing for veterans to do in particular, probably to get through those traumatic experiences. Do you have that experience where something haunts you until you finally find the words for it?
Yeah. So there were a lot of things that I saw. Half a Man opens up with the image of a body torn in half, and that was something that stuck around with me for a long time after the war, and other images. And then even long after when I thought, I'd gotten over everything, still occasionally some images will come back. There's a poem I wrote in Postscript War called Revenant, where I talk about a near miss with another car. And when that happened, the driver of that car had an epileptic fit and was seizing and crashed his car. He nearly took off the nose of my car. I was just parked at a stoplight, and then he hit a tree, and the car turned over, and I ran over there to help him. And it wasn't until afterwards, after the EMTs came and I went on my way, that I started shaking afterwards. And I started seeing some images from the war coming back to me then that I hadn't thought of in years. So yeah, there are some images that are just burned in there and keep coming back. Regarding the nature of it being cathartic, there have been a lot of people who have asked me, their sons or daughters or fathers or mothers or whoever has been to war, and they're wondering if reading these types of poems or trying to write them themselves, if that would be possibly hurtful for them. A lot of people worry about that. They try to avoid any talk or thought about what went on. And all I can say to that is I cannot think of a trauma or a problem that ever got better by ignoring it.
Yeah.
And the first time I explored some of these events and traumas, they were painful, but each time it was like a scab, growing up. It got less and less painful over time. And, by exploring them through poetry, it's helped me deal with everything a lot better. And I think it's a great thing for any veteran or anyone who has experienced any trauma to do.
Yeah, that's the thing that James Pennebaker discovered in his work on expressive writing. Originally, it was sexual trauma that seemed to have the biggest impact on people as far as stress and negative consequences throughout their lives. It was early sexual trauma, and he thought maybe at first that it was something to do with the sexual nature of it, but it turned out that that's just something that we don't talk about. And so the fact that we don't talk about it keeps it hidden in there. And that's where all the sort of gnawing and sort of negative consequences come from, is the hidden nature of certain things that we don't talk about. Because if we don't talk about it, we can't make sense of them. And then we never have this sort of synthesized experience of the world or something, which is, according to his research, is what the healing power of writing actually is just making those things that were silent, unsilent. And yeah.
Right. And when you do that, you essentially have two options. You can write about it, or you can try to ignore it. You can either own your history or let your history own you. And if you take that second path, it can, lead you to lots of traumatic. It can just make the trauma fester and get worse.
Mm-hmm. We probably have time for maybe two more poems, Bill. Do you want to? I don't know if you want to read that Revenant poem and something else, or I don't know, how do you want to finish out?
Yeah, sure. Well, since we just talked about Revenant, let's see. I'll bring that one up. So
it's on 53 if you're looking for it.
Yep, I have it. So Revenant. Like a flying ram, a turquoise SUV jumps the median to hurtle past my bumper, intervening space thin as blood-soaked gauze, prying loose that plug of worm-lined earth from where I'd tamped it down. Time freezes, as it had in Iraq, when an 8-foot mortar round whistled my way, meter by meter, passing in nanoseconds, before a dune deflected the missile from my life. As then adrenaline crackles through veins like electric current, and when I run up to the vehicle, now flipped on its nose, with the driver shaking in powdered mist of airbag residue like an apparition, the graveled bellow of my platoon sergeant echoes in my head. Don't think, soldier, act. And so I pull him out, this epileptic man who sees behind the wheel, and turn him on his side, forcing his airway open, cradling his head like a newborn child. After the ambulance wheels away, ghosts rise from their plot to follow the red trail of my taillights. Former targets of now faded fury, they slink into my bedroom, faces caked with sand, eyes fixed on mine, mouths agape as if they too are gagging.
And that was another poem from Postscript to War. That was Revenant, from Bill Glose's most recent book. And Bill, this, in addition to, the sort of rhythmic power that your poems have, which really stands out, there's just such an honesty and an authenticity to it too. Like, you're writing about real things in such an honest way, and I really feel like that's what resonates with people the most. So I don't know. Do you ever? Do you ever? How do you think about moving things into poems that aren't necessarily factually true? That's one of the things I wonder. Do you feel like your poems feel so honest and completely true? Do you ever mix things in that are true in a different way that might not be factual? Do you care about that? As a journalist, a reporter too, I wonder about that, about how accurate you think all the facts have to be.
Yeah. For the most part, when I'm writing about me, I try to, stay as factual as possible. I might allude to things happening in the third person. I have plenty of poems in Postscript to War where I use the third person in it, and I say you or something like that, and those tend to be invented where I am taking a situation that is true, a type of thing that is true, but I'm creating a scene that I have imagined. And I think as long as you stay true to the ethos of it, that is fine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well put. Do you want to close out with one last poem? And I was hoping, one of my favorite poems in the book is the reverse poem.
Okay.
War in Reverse. Do you want to finish out with that and just explain how this came to be? This is such I've seen reverse poems before, but this one's so intricate in the way that it seems like it'd be impossible to write. So, some people, if you have a reverse poem where the lines don't have a lot of enjambment and are sort of saying the same thing in either way, it's not hard to do. But this completely reverses it, and the syntax is all different too. So before we even read it, can you talk a little bit about how you came to write it, and then we'll read it to close out the show.
Right. Well, I had the idea for this reversible war poem for quite a while. I've mentioned how I revise, and a poem can live with me for many months before I finally feel it's free to go out into the world. This one took several years. There were pieces of it that I would construct going in one direction, and I couldn't figure out how to make something go in the other direction. The concept I had in my mind was to explain to the reader that who is unfamiliar with military members, with soldiers, who tends to think everyone is a carbon copy of the other, that every soldier, every Marine, every sailor, every airman is an individual, and each person can be different. And so I wanted to show two completely different views of soldiers looking at war. One as a warmonger, and one as a pacifist. And in doing that through the poem, it's hard to get it to work so it fits completely one type of person, and then when you read it in reverse, it fits the other. And so that's why it took so incredibly long. I'd tinker on it, I'd come and I'd put it away, I'd come back to it, I'd put it away, and as I said, it took a few years before I finally got this to the form where I felt it was ready.
Yeah, I'm not surprised to hear you say that, because it feels like that when you read the poem, that it would take so much work just to get it this right. And even though it's pretty short, it's still quite the endeavor to get it to work this way.
Mm-hmm. So the poem itself, it turns on the line, "I begin here, I belong here at home." That's the final line of the first half and the first line of the second half. I do have a video of this on the Virginia Poetry Online channel where you can see the text. But this one, okay, so here goes. War in reverse. Anything can be destroyed. I can be the one who pulls the trigger. My dream of being death is all that matters. I want no more of love. Thinking of the carnage I might incur, I'm fearful of a long and lasting peace. My greatest desire is war. That's why I hate civilized society. My place is in the ruinous din of battle. I have seen all I want of other people. I'm only good for killing, and will never think that I belong here at home. I belong here at home, and will never think that I'm only good for killing other people. I have seen all I want of the ruinous din of battle. My place is in civilized society. I hate war. That's why my greatest desire is of a long and lasting peace. Fearful of the carnage I might incur, I'm thinking love is all that matters. I want no more of death. My dream of being the one who pulls the trigger can be destroyed. I can be anything.
Yeah, that was war in reverse, and that I can be anything becomes anything can be destroyed at the first line. Just such an interesting poem. But Bill, before we go, can I ask you to read Anatomy? What was that poem? Anatomy
Lesson.
Anatomy Lesson again. Yeah, because it was choppy, and I let this interview go a little long, and I'm gonna sort of cut out some things that were choppy in the audio, and I'll paste back in this poem into the podcast version. So let me find it again. Oh, there's 24. Okay. So so why don't you go ahead and read that, and then we'll use this audio as if there wasn't any problem.
Okay. So this is Anatomy Lesson. Gold anodized plaques depict the human race. Conceived by Sagan, they arrow through space toward Taurus 2 million years away. The man's right hand raised as if to convey welcoming wishes of our soft bodies, naked, intact. All of NASA agrees that this is the image we should broadcast instead of what remains after the blast of a roadside bomb. How skin tears apart to show the ribs, the hollow muscled heart, the notch in which it sits atop a lung, and there the bit-off papillated tongue of a soldier before he could describe what beat within, what made him feel alive.
And that was Anatomy Lesson from Postscript to War. Bill Glose, thanks so much for being a guest today. It was just a pleasure talking to you, and these poems are so powerful and well written and so important, meaningful too. So thanks for being a guest and sharing all of this with us.
Oh, it was my pleasure, and thank you for everything you do with Rattle, and not just the Rattlecast, but everything else. The ekphrastic challenge, the weekly poem, and all the contests and everything else. This is really an oasis out there among the world of MFA poetry.
Well, thanks. So, it's so nice to hear you say that, because that's exactly what we're trying to do, Bill. Yeah. Well, thanks for being a guest, and I'll have to talk to you soon.
Okay. Have a good one.
Bye. Once again, that was Bill Glose, and I forgot to put it on the screen, but here is a photo of Bill. This is the cover of Half a Man, and this is Bill Innyrock from his book Half a Man. That's him on the cover from early 90s. His book Half a Man from one of the presses. And then his most recent book here again is Postscript to War, which you can find from Main Street Rag. BillGlose.com is his website if you want to find all of this and much other work. He's sort of a prolific writer in that he writes all sorts of things in addition to poetry, and does a lot with poetry too. So check out that out. His other books, Virginia Walkabout, and all of the great stuff at BillGlose.com. And make sure you subscribe to his YouTube channels as well. So thanks to everybody for the show today. It's been a lot of fun. We're going to take a quick break, and we're going to get to the open lines. Before we do, I'm going to let you know how it works. So email your poem if you'd like to share one to OpenMic. That's openmic at rattle.com. And then after you've done that, so I can show it on the screen like I was showing Bill's poems earlier, then choose one or the other. If you'd like to be on video, send me a chat message at Skype to Rattle Poetry, all one word. If you'd like to call in by phone, the number is 818-850-7727. That's 818-850-7727. Let it ring a few times, then hang up, and I will call you back when it's your turn. Within about an hour is how long about the show is going to go. So I'm going to take a quick break, stretch, get all this stuff ready, and I will be right back. And I'm back. Thanks for your patience. Let me stand up and stretch a little bit. We'll talk about it later in a little bit maybe, but it's nice to stand up and stretch after you're sitting at a desk for that long. Hope everybody out there is stretching and getting a little stretch in there too. So the prompt for this week was I'll put it on screen here. Oops, wrong one. There you go. Make the title of your poem a question and the body of your poem the answer, or the other way around. And that was the prompt for this week. I didn't write a prompt poem for this week because I was late on last week's poem, but here's Megan's prompt poem based on this prompt. If they can control our bodies and our minds, will anything be left? And once again, this is Megan's prompt poem where the title is a question and the poem answers that question. If they can control our bodies and our minds, will anything be left? The mist drifts lazy from the waterfall like a child wandering away at the mall. It is not the cascade, nor the pool below, not the water's wild west, or the devil we know. There are drops on my tongue, white wine, never meant for me, and yet mine. and that is Megan's prompt poem, If They Can Control Our Bodies and Our Minds, Will Anything Be Left? And now, last week, I didn't finish my poem in time, but it's sort of the prompt was to write an echo verse poem. And also in the news last week, Sirhan was up for parole, and his parole was granted. And then the governor of California, Gavin Newsom, denied that parole, which it always kind of breaks my heart. I feel like Sirhan is a tragic figure, actually. I don't think he's guilty. And if you read back through, the documents of Project Artichoke and Project Bluebird, and the theory that he was hypnotized, it is as weird as it seems. It's has a lot more credibility than you would think. And if you think about his history, and I sort of went on a deep dive while researching him for this poem. And he grew up. He was born in Jerusalem, then had kind of fled with his family to Jordan. His older brother was run over by a tank. Then his family sought political asylum here in the United States. And then he was growing up. His older sister, died of leukemia. And he loved horses and worked at the Santa Anita racetrack, and wanted to be a jockey, and someone offered him a job as a jockey. He fell off a horse, hit his head, went to the hospital, and was checked in the hospital for 4 hours and disappeared for 2 weeks. And when he returned, he came back a changed person, as all his family said, and filling these notebooks with strange things. And so this is my poem. It's almost a meta poem in the way that Seth Abramson says, where a lot of the lines here are from his actual interviews, the few that you can find, and his therapy, his hypnosis sessions that he did with Daniel Brown at Harvard University. He worked with him a lot as a psychologist. Anyway, this is a Sirhan under hypnosis, if this all makes sense. I don't even know if it does, but we'll see. Here's Sirhan under hypnosis with lines from his notebook. Counting backwards from 10, again, 9. I remember being there in the kitchen, an urn full of coffee. Awfully hard to see through the fog of 8. Wait, there was a girl. Beautiful, sir, her hair black as a mare's mane, a flame burning over this gorgeous dress. Yes, follow me, she said, and I'm a puppy, a guppy, a jockey about to be thrown. Alone now, she hops on the counter like 6 sticks of dynamite, fired like a 13th shot, hot, very hot. I don't know what to say. Play it cool, I think. But my artichoke heart starts to boil, and the bluebird's words are of smoke. Sir, I don't drink. Think was all I could think. Blink, and I'm pinned to the table, unable to move, the weight of the trigger finger something beyond my control. My role I understood when they said dead. We don't need another ruby. You see, still, I'll never understand this hand with a mind of its own. I wrote, quote, RFK must die. RFK must die. Why? When the rangemaster says shoot, shoot. When the rangemaster says shoot, shoot. Please pay to the order. Please pay to the order of. That is my Sirhan under hypnosis poem. And you can see I copied his actual note. This is a lot of the lines from the poem, or a few of the lines come from this page of his notebook, which he wrote about a month before the assassination. So anyway, that is my Sirhan echo verse poem. And maybe I will write a poem answering a question for next week. I'm a little behind schedule, but let's see what everybody else has to share. First, we will go to, let's go to Bev Wendell Anderson. We usually call her later in the show. Let's do it now. Hey, Bev, how you doing today?
Great. How are you?
I'm doing
I
excellent.
wasn't expecting an early call.
Yeah, I try to mix it. So I try to call the people that I call later, earlier sometimes, and so keep everybody is ready to go. So what is it that you want to share today?
Well, with your question-answer poem form, I was reading about how the IMF feels that the natural solution to climate change is whales. And I thought, oh, that's quite fascinating. And of course, I'm quite skeptical about the IMF because of what they've done in various of the poorest world countries, sort of in like an indentured servant to the West, that they loan them money and then they have to pay it back. So I went into this whole thing quite skeptically, and then realized that they have quite an interesting solution to climate change using whales.
Yeah, so do you explain this in your poem? Because I have no idea. I can't even imagine how whales might solve climate change.
So whales are, because of how they search for food and go down deep into the ocean and travel the world's oceans, they get all kinds of nutrients that are not in one place and bring it to another place through their poop. And then that helps the phytoplankton to grow, and the phytoplankton are very important in terms of producing oxygen and taking carbon dioxide out of the air.
Yeah, that would make sense.
That's what the poem is about. It's this, they call it the whale pump, that the whale in its traverse picks up all this stuff and redistributes it and helps climate change. And of course, during the Industrial Revolution and before that, the last 3 centuries, we killed 3/4 or more of the Earth's whales.
Oh, yeah, that is so fascinating. So with many more whales, there would be much more plankton. That's really interesting. Yeah.
So I just say IMF in the poem because it's so long. It's the International Monetary Fund, which is part of the UN. Okay, so my question is, entitled, is the IMF's nature solution to climate change possible? The IMF report on CO2 pollution supports whales as the natural solution. If we could help increase their population, it could change dire climate annihilation. Research shows wherever the great whales survive, phytoplankton, the ocean's food supply, will survive, fertilized by the behemoth's prodigious poop plumes. Rich in nitrogen and iron, this algae blooms. From these tiny, mighty phytoplankton comes half of all the Earth's life-giving oxygen. They also sink as much carbon from the air as 4 towering Amazon rainforests could ensnare. Today, 1/3 or fewer great cetaceans remain to circumnavigate their ocean-wide domain, as whaling plundered right whales to the brink, decreasing blue whales to 3%, not quite yet extinct. With eco-value of $2 million for each leviathan, makes possible whale stocks might see some restoration, but only if mammoth fines for each one lost were set for poaching, ship strikes, and bycatch in trawling nets. So to answer this existential question, the IMF should run with its nature suggestion and waste no time in implementation to reverse the harm to our global ecosystem.
Oh, that was really cool. Thanks so much for sharing that. And I, as I always tell my kids, I like to learn something every day, and that's my thing to learn for today. So thanks for sharing that with us, Bev.
Thank you so much.
Yep, bye.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, that was Bev Wendell Atherstone with Is the IMF's Nature Solution to Climate Change Possible? Now let's call up Caitlin Bucksbaum. She hasn't been on in a while. Just sent us a poem. From Warp 10 Lit. Hey, Caitlin, how you doing today?
Good. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, you're super quiet for
Am
some
I?
reason.
Oh, I wonder if. Let me see. Thanks for mentioning that. The regular callers would know when something's wrong. I think I might have. A lot of times when the computer. No, that's not. Yeah,
Well, I'm
that's
also
fine. I
on my
thought maybe I
phone
was on the
right now,
wrong.
so
I thought I was on the wrong mic because sometimes I actually put it on the like document cam mic or something for Skype, but that's not it. So anyway.
yeah, no, it might just be my phone. Um, I was out on a long vacation, so I wasn't. That's why I wasn't around. So I didn't write a poem on the prompt, but I do have a poem that is a question. So I thought I would read that. And I got it published. I submitted it before I left, and I think it was published while we were gone, but on Warp 10,
Mhm.
and I heard about that from Zachary Honeycutt.
Yeah, I was going to mention that. That's his favorite journal. So it's cool to see that people, spreading the joy.
Yeah, I don't do a lot of sci-fi poems, but I thought I would check it out. I was like, yeah, I've got this one poem. Maybe they want it. And I wrote the poem in 2020 after I watched The Mandalorian. And for I think a lot of people know about this, but maybe some people don't. This term deep fake has to do with using people's likenesses in movies, like after they die, and it's kind of creepy how realistic it is. So that's what inspired this poem. And the only other thing I was going to say about it is that it's actually in the Dio form. I'm pretty sure it's Dio, not Dio. I always say that wrong. But Jimmy Pappas invented that. And so I always try to tell people.
Is that two syllables per line? What's the rule for
another
that?
thing is, I don't know how it's displaying for you, but there's supposed to be a break after 2 lines. So the spacing didn't show up quite right on the website, I think. But so each stanza is 2 lines of 3 words. So 2 words and then 1 word.
Okay.
And the 1 word is supposed to be like an important word, not like an article, like the or something. So yeah, if people want to know more about that, the rules for that, they can ask me later.
Interesting. Okay, well, go ahead and read it whenever you're ready.
All right, let me find it again. Okay, here we go. Deep fake for Mark Hamill and Carrie Fisher. If the future we once imagined is here now, in the form of old faces cast in new and false bodies for pure entertainment, what is left to be discovered? What is kept secret or private from lying eyes and greedy hands?
Excellent. Deep fake. And the answer, or the poem in the form of the question. Perfect for the prompt, even though you didn't know it was coming. Excellent.
Yeah. It doesn't necessarily have an answer.
Well, that's good stuff. And yeah, those deep fakes are frightening. I mean, I imagine imagine if the president gets on TV and says something and it's not really the president, I mean, that's kind of a lot of bad things can happen from those deep fakes.
Yeah. I try not to think about them.
Yeah,
but I wrote a poem about it. So.
Yeah, exactly. Like a Black Mirror episode or something. Well, thanks for sharing that, Caitlin. And again, we love Warp 10. It's a really fun magazine. So check that out. It's warp10lit.wordpress.com if anyone wants to. Thanks, Caitlin.
Yep, thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, so let's go next to... let's call up Nevedita because it's late where she is. We also have Jerry Stephenson, Lisa Allison. No, not Lisa Allison. Dick Westheimer. We have Kimberly McNeil, Patricia Casey, 570 first-time caller number, which means I should say when I call you 570, make sure that you mute the stream that you're listening and just talk to me over the phone because there's a delay. Also have the poem in front of you when you're ready. So I'll circle back to that 570 next, but let's do Nivedita now. See how Nivedita is doing and let her go to bed.
Hello.
Hey, Nivi, how you doing today?
Hey, Tim, I'm doing great, thank you. How about you?
I'm doing great. It was a great episode after we got through the technical issues. Bill's just such a
That
wonderful poet.
that didn't detract from the episode in any way. I mean, the power, the intensity of his poems were still resonating even during those glitches, as you like to call it. The words were still reverberating inside. So that in no way, shape, or form detracted from the episode. So it was all in all a great episode.
Oh, that's great to hear. So what do you have that you want to share with us today?
Uh, the usual, the prompt poem and a new story poem.
Let's see. I have the visual verse link poem right
That's
now.
the prompt poem.
Okay. So let's. Is this your blog or is this published?
It's published. Visual Verse is sort of an ekphrastic magazine, so they
Okay.
give you a picture every month, and I think you can see that on the screen if you go there, and you have to write based on that picture. They set a word limit and a time limit, and you just have to submit if they like it. They
Oh,
publish
very
it on
cool.
that. So
What's the time limit like?
it's every month they come up with a new poem. So
Mhm.
almost every week they publish about 10 to 12 odd poems
Ah.
on that image, but they accept submissions only till the 15th of every month. So from the 1st to the 15th, you've got to submit, and then all through the month, they post pictures for that image.
Oh, this is very cool. And this is at visualverse.org. So similar to the Ekphrastic Challenge, another option like that, but you get to publish more. I like this. This is very cool. So for people just listening, let me shrink the screen a little bit so you can fit. So this is the photograph. It's for the people just listening. It's a pig being brushed while talking on a cell phone. So a very interesting piece of art that they chose, and
Very
then,
hard to describe some of the pictures.
yeah, very interesting. Let's see. So let's hear the poem whenever you're ready, Nivi.
Okay, great. Is this what we have come to? Is this what we've come to? Fitting our thoughts into 240 characters, pouring out our emotions into this tiny screen. Is this what we've come to? Tweeting as we come squalling out a womb, updating our status as we lay it to rest in another? Like vultures over carrion, our gaze keeps circling back to this minuscule device that carries our everything, waiting for a flicker of a million texts zing back and forth and back and forth through the vast reaches of space. Yet we're no closer than we were before. Yes, this is what we have come to, myopically peering into those tiny screens, trying to decipher text speak, the new Big Latin.
That's great. I love that. Cool poem, cool prompt, and cool website. I like the layout of this place too. So everyone's got to check it out. This is again versevirtual.org.
Visual Verse.
Visualverse.org, I should say. Visualverse.org. Yeah, very cool. And then you have another poem for us too, I think, right?
Uh-huh.
Okay, let me find that one. And this is a Poetry Spawn poem.
Yeah.
Okay. And here's the news story. I'll put that up on the screen as well.
So the story this time is not very funny. It was very hard to find funny stories. But then this, I tried to make the poem as funny as I could. So basically, scientists found out that pandas, despite being on the diet that they are of just eating bamboo shoots and leaves, sort of seem to gain more weight when they eat bamboo shoots rather than leaves. And for a long time, they were trying to figure out why this happened. And then they finally figured out that it's because based on whether they eat the shoot or the leaves, their gut bacteria, the gut microbiota changes. So basically putting pandas on a diet isn't really going to do anything because they're just going to keep gaining weight no matter what they do.
Oh,
So
that's interesting. And I wonder if that happens to us too, like...
that's exactly what I based my poem on. Sort of funnily, but anyway, that's exactly what I thought of too. I mean, so we keep saying diet and this and that, but is it really our gut bacteria that controls us as well?
Mhm.
Because now we're coming to find out that the microbiota does indeed control almost every aspect of our life. So why not this? I mean,
Yeah, and
we
even
should
those,
see.
all those different, bacteria and things that actually direct your behavior, like toxoplasmosis, getting cats to act, or getting mice to
Yeah.
act unafraid of cats so the cats can eat them. And yeah, so I mean, you might, if you get the munchies, it might be just because your gut bacteria wants to eat some potato chips or something. That's Yeah, interesting. Okay, so I have it on screen. Go ahead whenever you're ready with this one.
Great. A weighty issue. Panda's viewpoint. I started another new diet now, and being forced to eat just so many few calories a day. But my weight keeps increasing, and how? Now I'm up to 220 pounds, or so they say. Maybe it's my digestive system that's at fault, or maybe it's the weather playing havoc with me. Either way, my weight gain has to halt, for if not, this tree will soon not be able to bear the weight of me. At last, they found out what's causing me to gain more weight, despite being on the strictest of diets and eating, not so much. It's my gut bacteria that's the cause of this trait. Thank God. Now, I do not have to watch what I eat and such. Human. How unfair that pandas have it so easy. They can eat whatever they want and never have to care about gaining weight and feeling queasy. I wish I could be like them, and then life would be so easy, I swear. Wait, maybe someone will research on this and find out that I'm more like the pandas than I thought. They will find that my gut bacteria is causing my weight to go all out so that any thoughts and actions of diet can be considered as rot.
That is great. Yeah, so two things I got to learn today. Thanks. I got one from Bev and one from you. Thanks, Nivi.
Thank you. And just before I go, I think probably the last Rattlecast of the year, last year, we had to write about a memory that was close to us for the year. And I chose poetry because I was working on a book and I finally have the book in hand.
Wow, congratulations. Hold it a little higher.
Thank
Is
you.
it, it's She? Excellent.
The
Yeah, that is a
Reality of
beautiful cover
Womanhood.
too. Yeah.
Thank
I
you.
love that, Nivi. Congratulations. Where can people find it?
It's available on Amazon. I can send the link. I've posted it on Rattle's group. I can send the link here in the chat.
Excellent. Yeah,
And
please do.
Caitlin, actually, great thanks to Caitlin. She wrote the foreword to this book for me.
Oh, wow. That is so wonderful.
Our
I'm so
Caitlin
happy to
wrote
hear that.
so-
And Nivi, what is your website? Because I was thinking there's a blog you have that's something that sounds kind of like visual verse. What was your blog?
Just random with NK.
Random with NK. Okay. Well, excellent. Well, thanks so much. And congratulations on that book. I love that cover. That's wonderful.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Tim.
Yeah. Congratulations. Have a nice night, Nivi.
Thank you, Tim. It's lovely talking to you too. And thanks for a great show and a great Rattlecast.
Yeah.
As always.
Always my pleasure. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too. Bye. It was Nivi to Karthik. And find the in the show notes, find the link to that. That is so cool. I'm very happy to see that. And that Caitlin wrote the foreword too. Thanks for that, Caitlin. I just love this little community we have here. I really appreciate you all. Let's see. Let's go to we have another first time caller in Stephen Croft. So we'll do the 570 and then we'll do Stephen Croft as well, and then we'll get back to the regulars. Let's see who this is. Hey, this is Tim with Rattle Magazine. You are live on the air. Who am I talking to?
Stephen Concert. I'm in Pennsylvania.
Stephen Croft? Is that you?
Concert.
Oh, Stephen Concert. Okay, let me see. Did you email me a poem?
I submitted one for Poets Respond.
Ah, excellent. Okay, let me pull that up then. So do you want to, while I do that, explain what the poem was about?
The poem is it's in response to the Catholic Church's inability to control their priests who like to molest the altar boys.
Okay, and so this is a Daily Beast article. Pope Benedict willfully let children be raped, says lawyer. Was the headline you were writing about?
Yes.
Is there anything you want to add about it, or do you want to just jump right in and read the poem?
I could just jump right in, please.
Okay, yeah, go ahead. I'll put it up on screen. Yeah, go ahead whenever you're ready.
A gay poet's act of contrition. Created in the image of God, his breath burns its fire into my veins as it does for you, for them. Pedophile priests fondle little boys in dimly lit rooms in his holy house, their own sins kept secret. I firmly resolve, with the help of thy grace, And I stand in the shadow of shame, get blindsided by hypocrisy of hate that spills my way from righteous men, because they cannot show me the same forgiveness they impart to wayward clergy. To confess my sin, to do penance. Do they seek forgiveness or feign repentance after they have drank from the blood of Christ with the same mouth used to suck the dicks of teenage boys? To amend my life. Amen.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that poem, Stephen. A very important topic and powerful stuff. Thanks for joining us and sharing that.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, goodbye.
Bye.
Okay. Yeah, so, powerful poem. And I think all the time about this, you dodge certain bullets in your life to get where you are. Like, things could have gone in a much different direction. One of the things was I went to a school where the principal was a Catholic school, and the principal was arrested for child molestation. He used to take kids into the room and, when they were supposed to be bad. And I told my dad, that kids were getting spanked. And he came in and said, if you touch my kid, I'll spank you. And we didn't really get along with the principal very well. But the principal never did anything to me. But about 10 years after I was at that school, he went to jail for a very long time. So I don't know. It's a very, very important topic. Let's see. Let's go to Stephen Crawford. Actually, but first, let me put add Stephen Crescent to our address book. Okay. And let's call up Stephen Croft. And this is over Skype. So we'll see if we get this to work. Oh, hey, Stephen, I hear myself in the background, so X out of your window wherever you're watching this and just talk through Skype.
Okay.
Okay, great. Yeah, thanks so much for joining me. I don't know if you want to come on video too. If you do, click the camera button, but if not, that's fine.
We'll see what happens.
Okay.
Well, it's not unclicking, so I'll just talk.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. We hear you loud and clear. So this is a Poets Respond poem, or a news-based poem. It's published on another great website we should mention, Newverse News, which is newversenews.blogspot.com. And it was just published on Thursday, the 20th. Do you want to explain what this poem was about?
Yeah. And I sent it to Rattle the Poets Respond a couple weeks ago, and then got lucky with the Newverse News, which the competition, there's competition there, but not as great because they publish poems every day. Yeah. So I'd like to read the contributor note for Poets Respond. I lived in Afghanistan for a year and am heartbroken by what is happening to its people. I pray we will have the compassion to turn back and look at them again now that the United Nations has called for drastic international assistance. And the poem is called Women of Gore. In twilight, we stare into our deaths like we are the coming darkness. Our harrowed babies cry, but we dare not sing to them. The flower is gone in days, even tea is scarce. Our colorful dresses, long hidden or already burned for warmth. A bird calls a melody from a snowy tree like joy trapped by the coming darkness. Warlords with stern faces walk the streets with whips, rifles, whip march a head-bent man with hands bound behind by thick layers of rope. They tell us we have now what the hands of the people have earned, and there is nowhere else to go. Just a cold valley, hill passes, snowed for winter. If allowed to sing, we would moan a dirge. Now even the night bird is quiet. Nowhere is even a seed of relief. Markets, kiosks, shops, silent and empty. They say our sins haunt us now, girls wanting work and education. In the cold schools, boys recite the Karan, Amin. But how many times, O knower of the unseen, until our sins are erased? In our dreams of spring, we see green trees, goat's milk, and markets full of vegetables. In our dreams of spring, we dance and sing in our colorful dresses.
Yeah, another powerful and important poem. Thanks so much for sharing that. That was Stephen Croft with Women of Gore. And yeah, really good stuff. So you said you were in Afghanistan?
I was in Afghanistan in 09 through 10. And if there's time and if you got it, I did send a poem about Afghanistan too. It's called Gorgonized.
Yeah, I have that too. Do you want to explain a little about this? Sure, feel free to read it.
Sure. Let me explain. There's sort of a controversy among poets who write about war. In my case, my group is post 9/11. How much of the military verbiage do you put in there? And you can't get away from the military wording altogether. So the first stanza has ECP in it, which means entry control point. So just so you know that. And the rest of it, I think you can visualize, but it is about our front gate being hit by a car bomb, and which I witnessed.
Yeah. Well, I think including the language is part of the authenticity. So I'd encourage people to use it, even if people don't know exactly what it means. In most cases, I think it's probably better to include.
Right. You just are apt to get questions about it. I know I tried to call in last week, and you mentioned Bill Walsh, that you had a poem published in his journal, and I talked to him because we're both in the state of Georgia, and he's read some of my poems, and I have to explain the military terminology, but I can't. Like I've told him, I can't get away from it entirely. So if it's all right, this is Gorgonized.
Yeah, go ahead.
In the gate video, it didn't appear like the souped-up Deathmobile in Animal House. Just another dusty sedan making a sudden turn into our ECP. But the scrape of car metal against low-profile concrete barriers sang discordant black magic spells into the audio until the flower of the explosion that rose and stopped me that morning as I walked, my boots planted in the sand in awe. And disarray clouds the camera with sand, spills the banks of the video monitor, runs its imminence terrifying, a camel spider's crazy zigzag over everywhere in the camp, swinging its murderous head in its hands. I talked to my friend a month later after his easy days in the hospital, tell him how we watched him turn from the car bomber and run until seconds later the picture went black with smoke and sand. Let the scene loop from the blast to the revenant driver darting in again from the road, my friend running. And he tells me about the face he stared into for the time it takes to lift a rifle, both fear and hatred in the eyes, how he turned to run for 7 seconds in the video, for his life, for his family 7,000 miles away, until a speed of sound rippling of shrapnel laid him down to sleep.
Another really powerful poem and a perfect addition to this episode in particular that was Gorgonized by Stephen Croft. Thanks so much for joining us and sharing that, Stephen.
Thank you.
Yeah, I hope you can share some more poems again in the future. Okay, let's go to... Let's call it Patricia Casey. Hey, Patricia, how you doing today?
Good. How are you, Tim?
I'm doing great. What do you have that you would like to share?
Okay. I have two poems. One for the prompt. You ask a question and answer it in the poem.
Excellent. Let me. Yeah. So, do you want to?
Should we trust the science? Is the first one.
Okay. Let me. Let's see. Let me put this in a Word document because it's a little. Being centered, it makes it a little tricky. To display. One second. Is there anything you want to say about this before you start?
Well, I wrote this for Poets Respond in September of 2021 because of the government blaming the unvaccinated.
Oh yeah.
For all of the restrictions on our lives. So I have a different viewpoint of what's causing all of that, but I think the poem can answer that. Okay, yeah, sure. So is this Should We Trust the Science? Yes. Okay, let me go. I'll go ahead whenever you're ready. I got it. Okay. Sue Robati, with infant-sized reproductive organs and massive breasts from mother's synthetic estrogen, diethylstilbestrol, warns that medical practitioners prescribe trust we should never believe in. 6,000 BC trepanning and the newer lobotomy, drill and mix to get your fix, ruined human beings. Was that science? Elixir sulfonylamides, chemist Harold Watkins, who didn't know the many deaths he would create with his helpful potion, took his own life. Bayer's hemophilia drug, tainted with HIV and intentionally sold to poor countries. For what price? Gruenenthal, with their thalidomide, eased her morning sickness. It stole her baby's limbs and corrupted its mind. She complained. They threatened. Oh, and Pfizer and Bextra's $4.85 billion covered their guilt. Whose vaccine permeates your blood? It's our fault, the unvaccinated. If we would trust the science, everyone could return to normal lives. Or else, you'll take away our jobs. Enforce what we abhor, pit one against the other. For what? Civil war? Revolution? Is that what you want? Yeah, very interesting poem. Thanks for sharing that. And definitely the track record of the pharmaceutical industry does not warrant, a lack of skepticism, I guess you could say. So thanks for sharing that. And what's the other poem that you wanted to share? So the other one is, I chickened out on last week's prompt poem, Taut Skin of a Fake Smile. Mm-hmm. And I didn't want to read it last week. So then it's like, I still want to read this. So I thought I would try it this week. Okay, go ahead. Yeah, this is a fun form, actually. I like the sound of it. But go ahead. Yeah. Okay. Taut Skin of a Fake Smile. On the way to the store or other insignificant trip, rip to shreds your taut skin in rebellious fashion. Shun the forced smile while you blast, alas, you need to be loved, shoved up your crass ass. Yeah, very, very good. It sounds there. That's a really cool form. I do like that. Thanks so much for sharing both of those, Patricia. Thank you, Tim. Yep, always a pleasure. Bye. There's Patricia Casey with Should We Trust the Science and Taut Skin of a Fake Smile. And very good stuff. Okay, and now let's go to, we have an 8:05. I'll call in a second. Just to remind you to turn off your stream when I call and have your poem ready. Let's call up Richard Westheimer. See what Richard's got for us today. Hello, Richard. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. So I think that poem you wrote for today was really special.
Well, thank you. I worked a lot on it, actually. It took a long time to cram all that in there.
Yeah, I mean, when I say it shows, I don't mean it in the negative sense, like it's like right on the surface. Yeah. But last year I tried to write a Sirhan. Last time he came up for parole, mm-hmm. I wrote one, and I wish it had been that one.
Well, it does break my heart because I really do feel like he's a victim of MK Ultra, and it sounds crazy to say, but if you read those documents, that's exactly what they were doing at exactly that time, at exactly the same place, with exactly the same technique. So,
my question would be, would RFK have paroled him? And the answer is yes.
Yeah, I would say so too. I mean, it was the enemies of RFK that actually. I don't know. I see. I don't know how much I should say.
Yeah, well,
but
even without diving into that, just the question about what would Robert Kennedy do, the later Robert Kennedy, not the earlier one who was working for his brother. But I loved it. I really appreciate it.
Well, thanks. Yeah, I appreciate it.
So do I have time for two?
Yeah, sure. I'm trying to find what you had though. What did you want to read?
So I'll start with my Poets Respond poem. Which was a really interesting writing process. It was about the hostage taking in the synagogue in Texas, and it was one of these where I started off with an intention to say something, but I put it in a sonnet. A sonnet would not let that happen.
Interesting.
And you know how poems just bring something out that you don't expect. So this is an example of that. Of a poem letting me know perhaps what I was really thinking.
Yeah, very interesting. I'm looking forward to hearing this. Go ahead whenever you're ready.
Can I fit this fear in a box the size of a sonnet? This morning, my neighbor fires rounds at beer cans with his AR. I flinch like a rabbit at each crack and keep as far away as I can. When the shots stop, I walk by and greet him, though I'm told he thinks I'm one of those elites, which I am if by elites he means my tribe, which he might. At sunset, we gather with friends on Zoom and quietly light our Havdalah candles. I gaze at my face haloed on the screen, sip the fruit of the vine, cradle the spice box, inhale the sweet, then douse the flame in wine. Out of the quiet, Ed shares the news. A friend, a rabbi, taken hostage. Silence, yet another Jew. We sigh, the wind picks up, sleet ticks at our window pane. We shiver even in our fleeces. Never again, goes the refrain. Susan suggests we light another candle. I kindle the flame. Always again, I think, flinching a bit like earlier in the day.
Yeah, that's a great poem. Thanks for sharing that, Richard. And that's one of the things just to think about that we sort of don't, like we talk about the school shooting so much. But the thing that struck me was how prepared that synagogue was, because this is such a constant threat, which we don't really think about unless we're part of that community. And it's kind of an ignored part of reality now. Like we talk about the school shootings and all those mass shootings, but the religiously motivated ones we don't.
Yeah, and as one of the factors here is that, and this is, we were talking about this last night. So Havdalah is the Saturday night ritual that separates Shabbat from the rest of the week. So Shabbat's on Saturday night, you do this ritual. Some of us do. And on Zoom, since the pandemic, which is kind of fun, is that he was welcoming the stranger, which is a fundamental tenet of Judaism and subsequent, it's a religious tenet. And that probably happens thousands and thousands of times a day in every church and mosque and synagogue in this country, is that somebody is welcomed in. And so here this man was welcomed in to sip tea, which has its own symbolic issues, and it resulted in this. So it's a really, there are a lot of poems in that story.
Yeah, for sure. And so what's this other one? We should do this one too.
Yeah, so this is the question, and actually I had this title of a poem sitting on my desktop for a year.
Interesting.
And so with nothing underneath it, so I decided this morning I'd give it a shot. I did the old Tim routine, not the new Tim routine.
Yeah, well, being in the Eastern time zone, you have a little more time for Sunday
Right.
mornings. Yeah.
So, what is the smallest uninteresting number? 14,972, says one geometer. It's not a prime. It is no power to anything. It's not even a day's worth of seconds or the number of atoms in a virus, even though I read that 2,621, which is a prime, Americans died of one novel virus today, which may be interesting. And who knows how many died of another, which may not be interesting, but who's counting, which is interesting. But maybe 14,972 would be interesting if it had a dollar sign in front of it, or if it were the number of the Auschwitz guards tattooed on your granny's arm, or if it were the number of seconds to midnight on the doomsday clock rather than 100, which is interesting to me. And if it were the weight of a stone that an all-powerful God created that she herself could not move, now that would be interesting. The mathematicians say that the mathematicians say if they had an infinity of time and an infinity of lists and paper and ink, then no numbers would be uninteresting. But they don't. And by that logic, when I run out of time, then even one would be uninteresting. But zero, naught, nothing, when I am that, you'll have to decide.
Oh, that is fascinating. I love that poem too. What is the smallest uninteresting number? What a good question that is. Yeah, very interesting. So I'm learning all sorts of things today. I'm loving these poems.
And there are two definitions briefly of uninteresting numbers. There's the computational one, which is what is a number that is a size that it takes less computational power to create it than to write it.
Oh, interesting. That is. I didn't even think of that version.
And then there's the sort of the pure mathematical, which is almost philosophical. It goes back to the Greeks and their relationship to math. Is like, how do you define an uninteresting number? What is an interesting number? And to hear mathematicians talk about this is just
that is really cool. I love it. All the poems today have been great, from Bill to the open mic. It's been good poetry. So thanks for sharing two of them, Richard.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. Have a good week.
Yep, you too. Okay, it was Richard Westheimer with what is the smallest uninteresting number, and can I fit this fear in a box the size of a sonnet? Okay, who have we missed? Let's see, we have Caitlin. Oh, Mike Bales and Kimberly McNeil. So sorry to have you later in the show, but let's call you up.
Hello.
Hey, Mike. How you doing today?
Pretty good. I'm going to be on a project reading some ekphrastic poems Thursday night, the P2 project.
The P2 project? Where can we find that?
I'd say Google it. I'm in it. It's about a photographer, Steve Gear, out of Chicago, and I went to Evanston and wrote some poems about some strange photos of his that combined two different things. And I kind of wanted to be there among some of the others who I considered some of the best in Illinois. I'm affiliated with the Rockford Writers Guild. So that'll be Thursday. That'll be exciting.
Yeah, that sounds fun. So what do you have that you wanted to share today?
Just about one of my favorite places, Wisconsin. It felt very homey to me. The times when I was working near there or actually just north of the city. And it's called How to Find Wausau.
Okay, I've got it up. Whenever you're ready, go ahead.
Take the span of US 151 from Iowa into Wisconsin and watch currents of the Mississippi as it converses with itself. Watch the hills and bluffs as they rise and reveal themselves on either side of the highway as you pass through the driftless region. As tires of your van sing, listen to the land as it tells its stories. Turn north before reaching Madison. You're on another mission, and remember to travel light. What's left unresolved at home will wait for you while you live another life. Watch the landscape change before your eyes to thickets of forest and clustered lakes, although you can still find a strip mall at an exit on I-39. Lose yourself in time while the passing sun fades and skies turn dark. Take in all you can see, for you'll never know if and when you'll return. When downtown, listen as a barefoot girl plays a painted piano on the sidewalk, and remember, a sense of joy can be found in unexpected places. Watch an older couple in the park in the town square walking hand in hand as if in love for the first time, as children play on the stage of the band shell. Tomorrow, just an hour away, you'll spend the day in shadows, in wonders of the great North Woods, as the secrets they keep.
Yeah, excellent. Thanks for sharing that. Great picture painted of Wausau. How do you say that? Wausau?
Wausau, it's spelled Wausau. Different than the spelling of the town in Poland.
Yeah, very, very cool. Well, thanks for sharing that, Mike. Always a pleasure.
Okay, thanks.
Yep, take care. There's Mike Bales with How to Find Wausau. And let's see. Who did I say else? Who else? Oh, yeah, Kimberly McNeil here. Then I have a couple of poems people asked me to read as well, so we'll share those after.
Hello.
Hey, Kimberly. How you doing today?
I'm good, Tim. How are you?
I'm great. What did you want to share?
I wanted to share N95.
Okay, let me try to find it.
Okay.
I have Along the Road. That's not the one?
No.
Okay. Was it submitted to Poets Respond?
Yeah, I think I did.
Okay, let me pull it up there then. Oops. Help if I spelled McNeil right. Okay. It would also help if the server moved a little faster. There we go. Oh, N95. I see it right here. Okay, great. Thanks. And so obviously this is about N95s. Is there anything you want to say to introduce it?
Yeah, I have always thought that it would be the mask that we should be wearing to really decrease viral spread. But instead, we've been wearing paper masks that I think are relatively useless, except for I think that they reduce anxiety.
Yeah. There's a lot of with the low, especially with the Omicron, how little. I think there's even a good study in Bangladesh, I think, that shows that they've reduced the spread maybe like 11%, whereas other masks are much better. But they do. I don't know. I mean, if you sneeze, though, I don't know. It seems like they'd still work. Anyway, let's hear this. N95s, and it's an experimental wraparound haiku, which I've never heard of before. Do you want to say anything about that form?
Well, I just made up that name.
Oh, yeah? That's cool.
Yeah. So, okay. It's called N95. N95 masks. They are unavailable. Coronavirus. We are in deep shit. They are unavailable. N95 masks.
Oh, yeah, excellent. And that really especially applies early on in the pandemic. When there was a shortage of them. And now, I don't know, they don't make them kid-sized either, which is another problem. But yeah, thanks so much for sharing that, Kimberly.
Sure.
It was Kimberly McNeil with N95. Let me take a double check to make sure I didn't miss anyone. Oh, yeah, okay. So let's share some of these other poems. Let's go to Rosalind Stroll sent this. I don't see her on the call screen, but I'll read it for her. Rosalind Ann Stroll, I should say. And this is the prompt poem, When. So here we go. This is her. Oops. There we go. When. Who said it matters? The answer to the question when. Isn't that the anxiety question? Now I marvel every morning. I am still here, here. And where is here? No question remains the same. After the death of both parents and his sister, the young man is asked for one word. Endure, he says. Endure. Commit to holding light in your two hands as an offering. Do no harm. Be fragile and gentle. Then the answers, silent as leaves falling, may whisper of what is still possible. That was a beautiful poem. Thanks for sharing that. That was Rosalind Ann Stroll with When for the prompt. And let's read... I'm not sure. I didn't see Jerry Stephenson here today. But let's read his poem, Armed Band. Here we go. Armed Band. I envy the tiny, mighty cactus some days. Its pricked approach is evident to all. Even vision-impaired folk know it's a prick. More efficient than the turtle who lumbers around its armor shells out his waxed insecurities. The ever-obnoxious skunk gives fair warning, odor, adoring, never has to say, back clear away. Regrettably, as humans, we are less obtuse. We were not always of this ilk. We would non-verbalize our emotions, on occasion quite successfully, by planning selectively wardrobe and such. The prisoner, striped and manacled, the nun, none other than that arrangement, the soldier decked out sword, gun, all uninformed and adorned, allowed you to be informed of status, time, and placement. Back a century and a bit, the everydays had their ways to inform of grave situations. A black armband freed us to understand grief was at hand. These adornments would be brandished for a year, not adequate to heal, but clear enough to be well, a bit, down the road a ways. So forgetful minds could mind their own business, and not critique or judge these still lost souls. The black band hailed, handle me with care, and all got it. But we got stronger, more fashionable, insensitive, really. I suggest we evoke the black armband back. Make a statement together. Make a few things a little better together. Penned whilst atop my lofty soapbox. Thank you for sharing that, Jerry. That was great. Another excellent poem. I love the wordplay in there. And here's a poem by Danny Mask, who said he couldn't make the show today. He has gatherings every Sunday morning. But this is his Elvis and Evil poem. So here's Danny Mask. And again, Danny puts the title at the bottom, like a painting would have the plaque at the bottom with the title of it. Which is a thing. I think free people do that, which is interesting. Last night, Elvis and Hitler were on their knees praying. A murderous Nazi and the king kneeling in a church surrounded by water west of the Mississippi River. I pretended I didn't see them. I got a good look at them. It was them, I swear. Please don't ask me for more specifics. I wanted to ask them about the nature of good and evil. Then the alarm rings. I drag myself out of bed. I look in the mirror. I probably should look happier after seeing Elvis. Interesting poem there. That was last night. Elvis and Hitler were on their knees praying. Very, very interesting poem. Elvis and Evil. And Elvis Presley was born on January 8th, 1935. So a bit of a poet's spawn poem there. His whatever age that is, 87th birthday or something would have been today. Let's see what else we have. We have one more. We have Ted Guevara's poem. Let's see, I think I'm just going to do one or two because we're running low on time. Well, we can do both. They're not too long. So here's How to Leave Without Decaying. Again, this is Ted Bernal Guevara with two poems for us today. How to Leave Without Decaying. 1. Decorate dissolved dirt. On the shelf there's a salamander, curious. Is it going to change to deep fretful purple or dark envious green? Or is it going to sell me insurance? Under the lamp I proceed to zap zestful fiction and frail poetry. Then the lizard jumped down, scared me jokeless. It is when I side with humor that nothing is serious. But I saw you kill the joy, left love for blind at the side of the road, like a bright-eyed child who thought life had no end, minutes before winter. 3. Don't stop warmth because I loved you. Don't even wander off while I wash the window spotless. It's you who's responsible for only photos of crescent moons. 4. Plan your life from the rise. Now rejoice. Now resolve. For my mind will disencumber display, then decor, then dissolve. Those are the first of 2 poems Ted wanted to share, How to Leave Without Decaying. And we have another short poem here, Why is Uncontrollable the Opposite of Dimmed? And it refers to, let me see, he says this here, it refers to the Shakespearean sonnet. And often is his gold complexion dimmed, and every fair from fair sometimes declines by chance, or nature's changing course untrimmed, etc. That's from Sonnet 18 by William Shakespeare. And so here is the short poem, Why is Uncontrollable the Opposite of Dimmed? When you ask summer to victimize you, it doesn't have a choice. Yearn comes and bends its knees to an orchestra of hip emotions. Love, being the conductor in the eye and shines, has no violin or flute, and you tend to wing it, claiming music to be felt blind. Yes, the world is braille. Be patient. Myself and this dove floating by are unreasonable. And that is 2 poems by Ted Bernal-Guevara. Thanks so much for sharing those, Ted. And I think we're going to have to call it a show today. Let's do a quick Sciku. It is getting late. We extended the show pretty long. And here's a quick Sciku for you, though. This is an article that happened to catch my eye. A lot of times when I look at articles, I just wonder about the methodology behind the research. So I see a headline like this. Where is it right here? This is TV watching linked with potentially fatal blood clots. It's from the European Society of Cardiology. And I talked about how, I do really halfway through the show, I like to stand up and stretch and move around a little bit. I just walk around my office for a second, just to move. And this is why, because, blood clots are a real thing, and it's not good to be sitting in one position for that long. But the thing about this study is that, the title implies causation, but there's no causation going on here. The scientists are quoting, the findings indicate that regardless of physical activity, watching many hours of television is risky activity with regards to developing blood clots. But it was just based on a survey that asked how much time do you spend watching TV a day, and they asked, have you gotten any blood clots? They looked at their medical records, and they found a correlation there with the number of hours of TV you watch with blood clots. But if you have trouble moving around and can't be very physically active, that might lead to both blood clots and watching more TV. So it's causation versus correlation kind of issue, which you'd think that scientists wouldn't get hung up on that still, but they do very often. And so this is my Sciku about that correlation causation problem that I see all the time in science papers. I was hoping for just something better than a survey having a loose correlation that really means nothing. And this is my Sciku. A mystery, how the glistening of streets always brings rain. A mystery, how the glistening of streets always brings rain. And that's your Sciku for today. And that is the show for today. Once again, a great episode. If you're still hanging out with us after almost 3 hours, I appreciate it. We let Bill Glose go on for a little longer. Then we had a great open mic session too. I didn't want to cut anybody off. So really great stuff all around. And hope you have a great rest of your Sunday. Next week's guest, first I'll say next week's prompt. Next week's prompt is going to be write a poem with 1 word per line. It's a very simple one. write a poem with 1 word per line. I still have to do my question poem. Maybe I'll combine them both to catch up or something. But write a poem with 1 word per line. A very skinny, thin poem is the prompt for today or next week, and we'll see what we do with that, if we can find some interesting way to do it. And next week's guest on the Rattlecast is Lester Graves Lennon. Lester was interviewed in Rattle number 50. I first heard about him when I started getting all these poems and submissions called Lennon lyrics. And Lennon lyrics is a certain form that he invented, and other people started writing them all the time. And so I said, who is Lester Graves Lennon? It turns out he's a poet and a banker, and retired now. He's on the board of a bunch of presses and things like that. And he's very active in poetry now, but he's a banker originally. He has a book out that I just loved, we talked about before, but this is his newest book, Lynchings, Postcards from America. And they're poems based on these just awful postcard pictures of lynchings that Lester Graves goes through. And a really powerful book and a wonderful person. So we're really looking forward to that episode 129 with Lester Graves Lennon. That is Sunday, January 30th, the usual time, noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. Hope to see you then. Hope you have a great rest of your week. And I will talk to you soon. Goodbye.